Alderman Garrow.
Here.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Here.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Here.
Alderman Nurbin.
Here.
Mayor Abendroth is absent. Alderman Worth.
Here. The first item we have on our agenda is a public hearing for ordinance 2019-1533. It's an ordinance amending Chapter 1558 to rezone the 63-acre property located at 6108 through 6112 West County Line Road. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on November 12. The first reading at the Common Council was on December 11. Do we have a motion to go into public hearing?
Move to go into public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Is anybody here wishing to speak on this particular item? Hearing none, do we have a motion to close?
To close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
The next item before us is ordinance 2019-1534, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 to rezone the 444-acre property known as the Mequon Nature Preserve. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on November 12, and there was a first reading at the Common Council on December 11th. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
Move to go into public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is anybody here to speak on this item? Seeing none?
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is ordinance 2019-1535, an ordinance establishing the neighborhood commercial zoning district and amending certain development and design standards, creating a digital security image system for commercial properties within that area, and rezoning certain properties within that area. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on December 3, 2018. The first reading was at the Common Council on December 11th, and this relates to the area that was under moratorium. Do we have a motion to go into public hearing?
Move to go into public hearing.
Second.
There's one person who's registered to speak. Oh, we've got more. Just one moment. Okay. I'm going to start with Mr. Perry Robinson from 4811 West Angeles Bay Road. And you wish to speak and you oppose this item.
Right, the change, proposed change for 4828.
Okay, that item, just so we're clear for the public hearing, this is really a discussion about the overall changes. You can also talk about that particular item. And while this is the public hearing for 4828, that final decision may very well be at the next Common Council meeting.
So would it be best if I wait?
No, it's perfectly fine to talk about it today. I just wanted to make it clear before the public hearing.
Well, thanks to the council for this opportunity. First, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the staff from the Office of Economic Development, and particularly Ms. Tolveson, for what I view is, by and large, a successful outcome from the past year's moratorium study for our community, and specifically our neighborhood. I think it offers some terrific vision relative to future and sustainable commercial development, as well as some attractive safety features. I'm supportive of all the recommendations her office has put forward. That said, I speak tonight to encourage the Common Council to support the staff's recommendation of rezoning the property at 4828 West Angeles Bay to residential single-family instead of the so-called compromise position of neighborhood commercial with a PUD overlay. If accepted, this would have the effect of aligning that parcel with similar properties along the west bank of the Milwaukee River within the study area and eliminate its current outlier status. I have three observations to offer. In my view, this is a clear example of spot zoning. Purely for the record, what is spot zoning and when is it legal? The League of Wisconsin Municipalities help us with this understanding. Spot zoning is when a zoning ordinance is amended to zone a relatively small area for uses significantly different from those allowed in the surrounding area to favor the owner of a particular piece of property. Spot zoning is not necessarily illegal because such zoning is not necessarily inconsistent with the purposes for which a zoning ordinances can be passed. However, rezoning should be consistent with long-range planning and based upon considerations which affect the whole community. Therefore, spot zoning should only be indulged in where it is in the public interest and not solely for the benefit of the property owner requesting the zoning. And the Wisconsin State Legislature status update page further assists us in understanding spot zoning. It grants privileges to a single lot or area that are not granted or extended to other land in the same use district. Spot zoning is not per se illegal, but absent any showing that a refusal to rezone will in effect confiscate the property by depriving all beneficial use thereof, should only be indulged in when it is in the public interest and not solely for the benefit of the property owner who requests the zoning. I don't see how the so-called compromise position of rezoning 4828 to neighborhood commercial instead of single-family residential benefits anyone but the current property owners. Such zoning would not align with nearby properties. It would not reflect the current iteration of the City of Mequon land use map, and in my view is not a compromise. How do any of us who oppose the change to neighborhood commercial zoning benefit from it? It is a compromise position for the city and for the property owner, but not for any of us who live around and oppose future commercial development at that site. Environmental considerations. A future commercial development of nearly any size or type will alter the essential character of the neighborhood. It has to. This is a property located at a dead-end street with a residential pocket. Imagine the potential increases in traffic, noise, deliveries, and customers, which by definition comes with a successful enterprise and at a dead-end street. Would you want to see such a development and change take place directly across from your home located on a cul-de-sac? In a letter to the Planning Commission, we learned that apparently there are 3 to 4 small businesses currently operating at the property in question. My wife and I have lived directly across the street for nearly 3.5 years. I was completely surprised when I read there are multiple businesses already in operation there. Not that I care, I don't, because one would never know it. But make no mistake, that sort of unobtrusive and inconspicuous enterprise is most likely not in the future vision. 3, correct a possible oversight. In 1963, I was 6 years old, and 4828 was zoned single-family residential. But that year, its zoning was changed to B3 office and service business. The city of Mequon was probably a village and still quite rural in nature, so changes in zoning and variances granted probably had little or no discernible impact. Now, I realize history has no relevance to this zoning consideration, except for this. I'm certainly no expert in these matters, but just logically, I have to believe that best zoning practices obligates municipalities to regularly review their zoning maps in order to facilitate desired change in land usage, the creation of commercial development where appropriate, desired, and maintaining zoning consistency while eliminating inconsistencies within the districts. In my view, if such a periodic review has consistently been executed over the years, then why, after the most recent closure of a small arts craft store located at 4828 and before the Lesages purchased that property, would the city leave such a zoning outlier in an otherwise residential area? I'm not sure it would. In my mind, I think it simply was an oversight, and not until the moratorium was undertaken was this decades-old, unusual, and inconsistent zoning identified with a pathway to change it. Ms. Tollefson and her staff have attempted to correct that situation. Finally, as I mentioned last year when addressing this body about essentially the same issue, I mentioned that I dislike even having to be here speaking against my good neighbors. Moreover, my political philosophy embraces the notion of less government intervention in our lives, not more. And as I recently said to many, if I were in Jeremy and Cindy's shoes, I would be making the same arguments they are, and robustly. But I am regrettably and admittedly a selfish person, and therefore I am compelled to do my best to protect the value of the property we purchased nearly 4 years ago. Frankly, I see absolutely no way, being 100 feet away from the property in question, that my property, and perhaps even those of my neighbors, will sustain its value if a commercial business is allowed to operate from that site. It simply will not happen. My read on the PUD overlay is there is still plenty of latitude to create a very intrusive commercial enterprise. When the river behaves itself, and it hasn't this year, we are in an idyllic setting of privacy, peace, and serenity, surrounded by the sounds of nature. And I know that is hard for some of you to believe, given we're a few hundred yards from the Quick Trip in a major intersection, but it's absolutely true. It's like living in a park. And as such, I end by asking the council to accept the Director of Economic Development and her staff's recommendation to rezone the property at 4828 to single-family residential and not to neighborhood commercial with a PUD overlay. It goes to zoning consistency, site-appropriate usage, and protection of neighboring property values as well as environment. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. The next person registered to speak is Marty Carr, and they oppose the retaining the commercial zoning for Lesage property. Mr. or Mrs. Carr, I'm not sure which.
I'm going to defer to, we have an order here, and number one is Ken.
Excuse me, is Ken Jacobson?
Ken Jacobson. yeah.
Ken Jacobson of 10527 North River Lake Drive. And he opposes the rezoning of the property.
I'm the leadoff hitter for the neighborhood groups. Appreciate everyone the opportunity to speak this evening. I do live at 10527 North River Lake Drive. That's pretty much directly across the river. I'm a Mequon native. My parents built in the Hickory Hollow subdivision in 1978. I was 3 years old. They still live there. I have many aunts and uncles in Mequon, cousins, neighbors, and many friends, lifelong friends. I'm a product of Donjas Bay, Lakeshore Middle School, and a graduate of Homestead High School. And I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that I grew up in Mequon, and I owe many of my successes to date and many of my future successes on growing up in such a wonderful, loving community. It was the school system, it's the people, it's the residents, and it's the businesses that allowed my success. And it's why I came back and why I decided to raise my family here in Mequon. We could have gone many places in the city. We could have gone many places in the country, but we chose to be here. And I chose my current property because it most resembled the neighborhood I grew up in. It's quiet, the lots are big, kids have room to roam, and we feel safe. Coincidentally, it happens to be in the Donjas Bay and Lakeshore District as well. It's why I support keeping this entire zone across the river in single-family residential. Just the other day, I saw something I haven't seen in all the years I've lived in Mequon. I'd heard it was around, but I had never seen one. That's a bald eagle down by the river. I've only ever seen them in northern Wisconsin. I know other people have seen them around, but they're back. So's a beaver living just down the river from us as well. Things that haven't been there in many, many, many years. My entire life I haven't seen them down here, only in northern Wisconsin. That's what I want my kids to enjoy. That's what our families want to enjoy. Allowing commercial development here is going to have many unintended consequences. So we support single-family residential because it fits best with the Mequon community we all know and love. It fits best with the residential zoning that's there now. It will prevent future changes in noise, traffic, and light. It reduces the likelihood of future public safety concerns and crime. Puts to rest concerns that many people around us have about future zoning, and there are many that are here in support of this position tonight. There's a petition that exists with over 65 signatures to support single-family residential. And not in the least important is that it's going to help preserve and continue to grow the ecosystem on the Milwaukee River. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Who in your group was next, if you want to go in a particular order? I'll follow that. If not, I'm going to, excuse me? Why don't you step up and announce yourself, sir?
Okay. Good evening. My name is Reed Kaling. I've been designated to give a bit of history from our side. I too live in River Lake, used to be River Road, till we developed back in '86. And I'll just give you a little background and bend you a little bit to talk to you about our concerns also about the residential situation across the river. The Canary family has been in Mequon on the Milwaukee River since 1919. In fact, that is where I live today. I'm third generation. My grandfather, Alexander M. Canary, purchased the property as a summer residence and was a very successful businessman, dealing in wholesale electrical nationally. He always looked forward to the family's 3 to 4 month restful vacation time here in Mequon. As a hobby, he would raise Guernsey cattle and prize bulls on the property that I still prize today. The farmhands lived in an old guest home that was built in 1845. In fact, I have many photos of the original home, that era, and aerial photos that were taken by my father in his plane in the 30s. He built the summer residence. The winter residence was really far away. It was in Shorewood. So they had a long journey back in those days to come out to visit. So they only stayed 3 to 4 months and had their fun. Built the residence, the one I currently live in 1929. The same year he started the Ozaki Country Club along with 4 others. The architect who designed the summer home was Herman Esser, who also designed and built the country club. That was then. During the mid-'50s, my family made the property our permanent home year-round. Even then, we could see issues developing because of Mequon's population growth. There were many incidents, but some were more serious than others. One that comes to mind was when Angelo, who's a gardener, our gardener out there, at the home, and I were in the back of the house and heard a series of gunshot blasts across the river. One volley of those shots was of especially attention-getting when we heard the pellets hitting the side of the house. Angelo, in his broken English, yelled out, "Duck, Reed!" Obviously, they missed the ducks. And so there was a round of pellets. My father went and paid the city a visit and told of the incidents. Once upon hearing it, the duck hunters admitted this was obviously the wrong location for hunting. That was back that location. It was back in the mid-'60s that Mayor Egan rewarded me with a key to the city and said, "Reed, Mequon is very proud of you." And I never forgot that because there was a lot going on there. There was a lot of, we won the statewide Battle of the Bands contest with the group I had. And that was the start of my music career, which brings me to a story about the time I was touring. I was in a group called the Grassroots Player. I was Paul McCartney and Beatlemania. So I was all over. I lived in Los Angeles. But we toured extensively. And at the ends of the tours, some guys would go to Vegas, Palm Springs to regroup before going back to our home in Los Angeles. And I always came here and stayed with the family here in Mequon because that was probably the most magic place to be, and we want to keep it that way. They invited a couple of the guys after a long tour, and they came to visit and going over. After a tour, they came and stayed in Mequon. My grandfather called the place Happy Hollow Farm, and we named it, we called it the Rock and Roll Rest Home. So today we're dealing with growing concerns, noise pollution on a greater scale. Motorcycles making their way to a Harley dealership in Thiensville on Highway 57, especially in the summer months. The noise can be so loud that it's difficult to talk by the pool or on our back deck. Sirens in the early hours across the river on Highway 57 awaken us frequently. It's not one police car. It's a concert of sirens. It's very loud. Responding to issues, which we found out later, was to the Quick Trip gas station near Dunges Bay in 57. In closing, it is my hope that you do the right thing and zone this area as residential to protect the tranquility in this wildlife area of Mequon. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Kaling. Next, is there somebody in your order who's going next?
Hi there, I'm Noreen Olschlager, and I live at 10440 North River Lake Drive, and I'm here to speak about Ordinance 1535, and specifically to the rezoning of certain properties within the neighborhood commercial node to R3 and R4, okay? And that, the one that I'm specifically interested in is Mr. Lesage's property at 4828, is it? West Donges Bay Road. The property is currently zoned B3, and there's some talk about moving it to a neighborhood commercial designation, but the plan put forward by the city, the plan made by the planning department after they completed their study, includes it as residential. I attended the planning meeting on the 3rd of December and the Common Council meeting in December. So I've watched, the issues being addressed on this property. I know that Mr. Lesage sent forward a letter on December 3rd, the day of the planning meeting, to the city objecting to changing the zoning. He didn't think it was fair to him, and he was concerned about being able to operate his businesses as well as have his residence there. There's definitely his residence on that property. There are two other structures, one someone else has referred to, that was an arts and craft type store and school, and it, as far as I know, is not currently being used for anything. But his concern is that he would not be able to operate those businesses and have his residence under a residential rezoning. But after talking to the city planning department, they feel that there's every chance that his operations are largely going to fall in the homeowner business category that is allowed in residential districting and residential zoning. And they're wanting to work with him on that issue. Okay, he doesn't currently have business permits or licenses recorded for the location. So we aren't sure. Mr. Robinson said they don't see a lot of traffic or anything unusual. We don't see that from the other side of the river either. So I would like to ask you to take the planning department's recommendation and move this forward as a part of 1535, accept the complete situation. If you make Mr. Lesage's property residential, he has the option to come back and ask for commercial zoning. That does not take that option away from him. What it does is it means that he has to go to the planning department with a plan, and then that goes on to the Common Council. What that does is that allows residents, such as the ones that are appearing here tonight, to be involved in overseeing the process and working with what might actually get developed on that property as a commercial property. So I think that it would impact him. He would have to do some more work, but it would not remove his right to develop that property. And I think it would allow the rights of all the other residents in the area who are largely residential, as has been stated, surrounding that, to have an input to what might ultimately be developed there commercially. So that's my comment tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person, Ms. Carr.
Yeah, I'm Marty Carr, and I live in River Lake neighborhood. I've lived in River Lake for about 20 years, and many of my neighbors have lived here even longer. Many of us plan on staying in our neighborhood for another 10 or 20 years. I can speak for many other families in adjacent neighborhoods who would be directly and indirectly affected by any proposed commercial development in this area. I want to support our city planning staff's recommendation for the rezoning of the Donges Bay Cedarburg Road area, including the Lesage property, to be designated residential single-family. At one time, this property was designated residential single-family for a number of years. In fact, properties along the river following the Cedarburg Road corridor are generally zoned residential single-family. Businesses which were formerly zoned commercial along the river have either been or are in the process of reverting back to residential, single-family. We would like to continue with this momentum. Rezoning the area residential single-family will stabilize the area, greatly reduce police involvement in this area, and will have a profound effect on the values of our homes and properties surrounding and adjacent to this area. In addition, the financial base for this property, if subdivided as residential single-family, will give Mequon responsible and stable financial support through taxes, which will be consistent and reliable in the future. Again, we want to support our city planning staff's recommendation for the rezoning of the Donja Space Cedarburg Road area, including the Lesage property, to be designated residential single-family. If the Lesage property is zoned anything other than residential, many families would be very concerned with noise, lighting, and erosion generally attached to commercial zoning along a river. Commercial zoning in this area would adversely affect our property values and adjacent property values. We have submitted our letter of intent and were able to easily obtain over 60 signatures so far and in a short period of time. Neighbors are closely watching what happens this evening and in the future. In conclusion, we want to continue living in our beautiful neighborhood, see our property values increase, and preserve the quiet nature of our area, which drew us there originally. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. Then, Mr. Bastian, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is Joe Bastian. I've been a resident of Mequon since 2001, residing with my wife Pamela at 10443 North River Lake. The property, I might add, is directly across the river from the planned rezoning. I'm here this evening to strongly object to the proposed rezoning. I feel this area needs to be zoned residential single-family, clearly not commercial. Our decision originally to move from Whitefish Bay to Mequon was based on several factors, but mainly focused on a high quality of life in Mequon, a wonderful school system, strong property values, and great public safety. Based on the proposed rezoning, I'm very concerned about these issues, particularly about the lack of public safety and, as previously mentioned, declining property values. Everybody knows the immediate area is somewhat of a hotbed for nefarious activities. The Quick Trip gas station at the corner of Donjas and Cedarburg Road has alone had over 300 calls to the police. This situation has stressed out the local police law enforcement. I try to avoid the area as a result of that. Zoning to allow unduly commercial development will only exacerbate this. Further, it should be noted that the River Lake subdivision already has its fair share of related safety issues. Our subdivision conservancy is adjacent to the Donjas Bay Road, where it dead ends at the Milwaukee River. We've had ongoing issues such as illegal parked cars, garbage drop-off, trespassing, and drug dealing. We have to continually monitor this area for suspicious behavior, and we don't want to attract similar issues with a commercial rezoning that would impact our quality of life. So to be clear, I'm all for commercial development when it makes sense, but this rezoning clearly doesn't make sense. Single-family residential designation is in the best interests of this area. Single-family residential best fits the existing residential zoning, prevents further increases in traffic, noise, and light pollution, reduces the likelihood of additional public safety issues, and addresses the concerns about lower property values, and as previously mentioned, preserving the existing ecosystem of the Milwaukee River. So to reiterate, our support of the original recommendation of the planning staff to zone the Lesage property as single-family residential, we don't want to separate the property or give it special treatment. I don't think that would be in the best interest of longstanding neighbors. We understand that Mr. Lesage can return in the future to request rezoning. But it would be helpful at this point if we could hear his vision for the future of the property. In closing, it would be unfortunate to disregard the concerns of the majority of long-standing neighbors to accommodate the special needs of one property owner. As concerned property owners, we'll be watching closely as this issue proceeds. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bastian. I believe there's only one other person registered, Ms. Hudson.
Good evening. My name's Catherine Hudson. I reside at 10357 North River Lake Drive. I'm here to speak in favor of single-family residential zoning. My husband and I moved here 25 years ago from a property which was a farm in upstate New York of 105 acres. We had a stream that ran around 2/3 of the boundary of the property. When we got to Mequon, we were amazed and blessed to find the property that we have. Although it's only 2 acres, we abut the Nature Conservancy of the River Lake subdivision. As such, that allows us to have all the wonders of nature, having deer, coyotes, blue heron, alligator snappers, and everything coming through the property. This year, as Ken mentioned, has been very unique because not only have the bald eagles been circling over the property, we've got a beaver. We've named him Justin Beaver. Thank you. And Justin has been very active. Justin has been helping us trim the vegetation around the ponds. We have 3 ponds in the River Lake Subdivision Conservancy area, and boy, that beaver is really industrious, and he's been taking down stuff. He's taken out a poplar tree that had about a 14-inch diameter, and interestingly enough, he's taken out several 4 to 6-inch trees that he then floats up the South Pond and drags 25 yards across land to the Milwaukee River. We don't know exactly where he's building his lodge or what he's constructing because we can't see it from where we are, and sometimes beavers build into the bank. But Justin's been very industrious. And we think it's interesting that he's probably a bachelor looking for love. As was mentioned in the John Gerda article in the Journal Sentinel last week, he's probably what's called a disperser, an animal that is moving out from safe habitat to try to find new safe habitat. What that means is that he and the bald eagles, which are new to this area, find our part of the river to be very friendly and acceptable to them. So we don't want to do anything that's going to compromise that. So I'm speaking in favor of having the property continue to be, every property, as much as possible on the Milwaukee River to be zoned single-family residential. And I think this is going to be of great positive value for Mequon, for me, for my neighbors, and for Justin. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? If not, I entertain a motion to close the closed session.
Move to close.
Second.
Oh, well, then please step forward.
Do we have to move to reopen?
No, we haven't had a vote yet.
That's true.
Hello. My name's Jeremy Lesage, and I didn't realize that there was such a stir. So I did not initiate this process as far as the change to neighborhood commercial. We purchased the property as B3, intending to do something that was homogeneous with the neighborhood and not, wanting to see it be railroaded into residential. I mean, that's very concerning to us because we bought it as an investment both to live there and work there. Definitely not trying to create any kind of problem with noise. My family lives here. We floated in proposal idea for the property back about a year ago, and got lots of good advice as far as what would potentially work and not work. We're continuing to develop those plans and ideas. Very supportive of the neighborhood commercial district, because I know there was problems with other properties in the area and potential plans that, with us having our family there, we do not want to see problematic type property values go down because of enterprises that would be disagreeable to everybody. One of the people that spoke mentioned that they would like to see what the vision is for the property, and I'd be happy to develop that further and work with the people and find out what might be agreeable for the property. So not trying to railroad anything through. Kim's been very helpful to try to find a compromise here. Definitely do not want to be railroaded into residential. When we purchased it as B3, the neighborhood commercial zoning does significantly limit what I can do on the property, and I'm quite fine with that. And we're not trying to do anything that would be disagreeable with the neighborhood concerning noise or creating additional traffic or doing anything significantly problematic. And I'd be happy to meet with anybody here to further discuss that and develop ideas and find out what would be agreeable to everybody in the neighborhood. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lesage. Once again, is there a motion to close the public meeting?
Move to close.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
The final public hearing we have is an ordinance authorizing the termination of the 2018 development moratorium for the Donjas Bay and Cedarburg Road neighborhood. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on December 3, and there was a first reading at the Common Council on December 11. We have a motion to go into public meeting.
Move to go into public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Does anybody wish to speak at the public hearing on this particular issue? Hearing none.
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is personal appearances and public comment. Citizens wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time. If you desire to be heard on agenda items, you may be heard when that item is considered on the agenda. Please speak into the microphone. The time limit is 5 minutes. Is anybody here wishing to speak in the public comment section of the meeting? Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is public officials' reports. The first item is for the mayor. The mayor's not here. I get to speak in his stead, but I'm going to be very brief. I'm simply pointing out the reason why I'm sitting in the chair this evening is the mayor's out of town. When the mayor's out of town, the council president chairs the meetings in his stead. Even though, and I've consulted with the city attorney, and although the mayor doesn't normally get to vote at the council president serving in the stead of the mayor may vote as one of the 8 aldermen, so I plan to vote tonight. The next public officials report is the city administrator.
Thank you, Council President Worth. Just 2 quick items. Throughout the course of 2018, the Public Works Department has been working in tandem with the Public Works Committee to pursue a partial quiet zone on the east side of the city along the Union Pacific rail line that runs parallel to Interstate 43. Recently, there's been a development related to these efforts, and Public Works Director Kristen Lundin is here to provide a very brief update regarding that progress.
For those not on the Public Works Committee or not following our work as closely as the committee members are, we were able to move through the quiet zone process for the Donjas Bay node alone, and that was because of the advance warning signals that are at that location. Based on the inventory update that was required on behalf of the railroad and the installation of signs, we were able to write the jurisdictional agency letter on January 21st. The quiet zone shall be in place no sooner than 20 days after that, so hopefully within the next month or so, the neighborhood should be getting a little bit quieter.
And that partial quiet zone will be in effect between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., correct, Kristen? Okay, thank you for that update. And then one other quick reminder, with the end of the holiday season and the new year upon us, the Public Works Department will also be collecting Christmas trees through the end of this month residents interested in having a free pickup of their Christmas tree can deposit them along the side of the road next to their mailbox. And again, we'll be picking up trees through the end of the month, January 31st.
But that does not include wreaths or anything with wires in it.
That does not include wreaths.
All right. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have the Common Council meetings, minute meetings of December, the Architectural Review Board minutes of November, the Festivals Committee minutes of November, the Finance Personnel Committee minutes of November 13th and November 20th, the Park and Open Space Board minutes of October 24, the Planning Commission minutes of November 12, the Public Safety Committee minutes of October 9, the Public Welfare Committee minutes of November 13 and November 20, the Public Works Committee minutes of November 13th, the Sewer Utility District Commission minutes of November 13, and we have Resolution 3577, which is a resolution approving a certified survey map for the property located at 6108 through 6112 West County Line Road in connection with the dedication of public right-of-way along County Line Road and Bear Roads. It was recommended by the by the Planning Commission on November 12. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion or anything that anybody wants to remove from the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None heard. We have two first readings. It's a first reading of order. They won't be acted upon this evening unless somebody moves to suspend the rules, and I don't think we can. The first is ordinance 2019-1537, an ordinance to rezone the property located at 4828 West Donges Bay Road to create a PUD. That recommendation is forthcoming by the Planning Commission on January 14th. This is only a first reading. And then ordinance 2019-1538, an ordinance amending the PUD ordinance 2017-1512 for the properties located at 6209 West Mequon Road and several properties on North Industrial Drive to increase the number of single-family dwelling units from 21 to 23. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on December 3, and this is a first reading. We're now to ordinances. The first ordinance before us is ordinance 2019-1533, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 to rezone the 63-acre property located at 6108 to 6112 West County Line Road. Do we have a motion? Excuse me, this was recommended by the Planning Commission on November 12th, and there was a first reading at the Common Council on December 11th. Do we have a motion on this ordinance?
Move to approve.
Second.
Anybody wish to be heard on the ordinance? Any discussion by the council? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, this is passed. The next ordinance is 2018-1534, an ordinance amending the zoning code to rezone the 444-acre property known as the Mequon Nature Preserve. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on November 12th, and there was a first reading at the Common Council on December 11th. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to clarify that these are supposed to be 2019, correct, not 2018?
You're right, the agenda has actually been amended, but I don't have that in front of me, but these are 2019, correct. Let me, sorry about that. So for 2019, any comment or any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that ordinance passes. The next item is ordinance 2019-1535, an ordinance establishing the neighborhood commercial zoning district and amending related specific development and design standards, creating a provision for a digital security imaging system for the commercial properties within the node, and rezoning certain properties within the node. Again, this was recommended by the Planning Commission on December 3. There was a first reading at the Common Council on December 11th. I'm going to divide the question on this item between all of the ordinance and the ordinance that's the property located at 4828 West Donges Bay Road. That doesn't mean we can't deal with both tonight, but we'll take up the first ordinance, which is the bulk of the ordinance, and then discuss 4828.
Point of order, do we need to make a motion for that and approve that? Because it is listed under one
We need a motion to
ordinance.
approve excluding that one
I think
address.
anybody can,
Right, anybody can ask to divide a question. It's just a request that then, once is made, is happened. So there's not really a motion that gets passed as part of that.
any member can divide the question.
Yep.
So first, we're going to take up the bulk of the ordinance other than 4828. But let's start with, well, do we want to have a motion to approve at least that portion first?
I'll move to approve as divided.
And is there a second? Ms. Tollefson.
Discussion.
Well, I'll just give a brief overview. At the December Common Council meeting, we had a committee of the whole discussion. So we presented the Planning Commission's recommended action for the moratorium. That was approved 6-0 by the Planning Commission. That includes the requirement for the digital security imaging systems for commercial uses. We're working to rezone properties to correct non-conforming uses. We've created a new commercial zoning district. We've added some specific design and development standard associated with some of those uses. And out of the 29 properties that were part of the moratorium study area, we made recommendations to rezone 13 of those 29 properties. Staff has met one-on-one with property owners at least once, sometimes a few times. Other than 3 property owners of the 29, we just were not able to get them in for a meeting. But I can tell you, based on all of the meetings that we've had with the property owners, there's a high level of consensus and support, not only for the zoning changes, but some of the potential or anticipated uses that staff would maybe expect to see the private market respond with for this particular neighborhood. So that gives an overview of our recommendations. At the December meeting, the Common Council had a few inquiries. One wanted to modify the zoning district to only allow greater stories or stories beyond 2 stories through a PUD process. So we made that adjustment. One of the council members asked for what the anticipated cost for the digital security imaging systems might be. We have indicated in the staff report that that cost estimate looks to be about $5,000. And then we spent some time talking about the alternative for the Lesage property at our December meeting. And we can address that later as part of this conversation if the council chooses to.
Thank you. Any discussion on this first part of the ordinance? Alderman B. Schneider, I think, had his hand first. Sorry.
We talked about the digital camera system, so you came up with that $5,000. Is that required of current businesses or only when those businesses are going to change?
When there's a change or new.
Or new? Okay. So Quick Trip, Libby, Montana, all those aren't required to have those right away?
Correct.
Okay.
The other, Alderman Dr. Schneider.
Actually, I had an amendment that I wanted to change something, not so much with the resolution itself, or the ordinance rather, but with the documentation that goes along with it indicating what is permitted and not permitted. And I'm referring to page 81 where it says beer, liquor stores essentially, which is listed on this document as being conditional use. And I have a few objections to this. One is that given what we know about this neighborhood and the concerns of the neighbors and the crime in the area, I don't feel like a liquor store needs to be a conditional use. I think it should be not permitted. Given, the Wisconsin legislature and their changes in the law in late 2017, making it harder for municipalities to work with these conditional uses, and I just don't see a need for it. Also, secondarily, when I look back at our paperwork from the December 11th meeting, it was not listed there as being permitted. It was blank, i.e. not. So I'd like to just strike that C out of there and make it a not permitted use for liquor stores in this neighborhood.
I'd second that motion.
Any comment from staff?
I'm comfortable with that change.
That does not
Alderman
affect the Quick Trip selling beer?
Correct, that's a gas station and that's an ancillary use to the convenience store. So this would just be a standalone beer, wine, liquor shop.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed to the amendment? The amendment passes. Anything else in discussion about the primary portion of the ordinance? Hearing none. All in favor of the ordinance as written, other than with respect to the one property, which will be taken up separately, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ordinance passes. Now, with respect to Mr. Lesage's property, I would be open to a motion of some sort.
That was 2019-1537, was that not?
Well, that is 2019-1537 we can't discuss tonight.
Right.
That's the PUD that's a potential option. I mean, we effectively have three options. One is to leave the property and do nothing, to not rezone it, which would leave it a B3 property. The other is to amend the zoning and create residential, which is one option proposed by staff. And the other would be to do the PUD, which would be the other option that staff has presented to us. If we're going to consider the PUD, that's next month. So it might be in order to table this entire thing and discuss it in one fell swoop rather than try to
I'd
piecemeal
like to see what Planning Commission has to say about it, so I'd make a motion to table.
Second. We have a motion and a second to table. That's not a debatable motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No.
Excuse me, all in favor. I was going to say, any opposition? No?
No.
Okay, so we have one no. The motion to table passes, and we will discuss this at next month's meeting.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is an ordinance, ordinance 2019-1536, and ordinance authorizing the termination of the 2018 development moratorium for the Donges Road and Cedarburg Road neighborhood. This, again, was recommended by the Planning Commission on December 3, and there was a first reading at the Common Council on December 11th. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve. I'd make a motion to approve with the exception of 4828.
Right, because if we just tabled that, we can't bring that.
All right, let's hear from staff on that item.
This action is just to terminate the moratorium, indicating that we're done with our study, and we're moving forward, taking action on all of the measures, which you just did by passing the other ordinance.
And do you have any objection to terminating the moratorium with respect to the particular property and discussing that at the next monthly meeting?
I don't.
So we did have a motion over here. You started to make a separate motion. Will that be a second, or do you want to, we need a second on the first motion, which was offered to approve?
Second the first one.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Did you want to amend to hold off on 4828, Alderman Schneider? I'm not trying to preclude that. I just wanted to hear from staff. Alderman Brian Schneider. Okay. All in favor of the motion, the ordinance, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ordinance passes. Our next item is Resolution 3578, a resolution authorizing the reimbursement of certain expenses of Rachel Pickett-Metz related to volunteer service on city boards or commissions. A recommendation is forthcoming by the Finance Personnel Committee for this evening.
It was unanimously approved.
Did you read the chair of the Finance Personnel Committee?
Tonight I was, yes. And this was unanimously approved.
Recommended to the council. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Alderman Strelchak?
Aye.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Worth?
Aye.
Alderman Garrow?
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
That matter passes. Resolution 3579, a resolution authorizing borrowing in an amount not to exceed $5,085,000 and providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes. Alderman Strelchak, what was the recommendation of the Finance Personnel Committee?
The recommendation, it was recommended to Common Council for approval. It was unanimous.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
And any discussion?
I think it'd be appropriate, at least if
Alderman
city
Meyer?
staff, I think it'd be appropriate, at least if city staff would let the people listening to that know what we're borrowing the money for.
I think that's a good idea. So will give us a short presentation.
Welcome.
Good evening, Council. The resolution before you is to borrow approximately $5.1 million. The proceeds will be used for road reconstruction over the next 3 years, and a portion of the money could be used for 1 or 2 city parking lots over that time. As you recall, the city's taken a break from road reconstruction in 2018. We did one self-funding project for a portion of Donjas Bay Road. In the past, we've borrowed approximately $5 million, 5.1 or so, to cover 3 years' worth of road reconstruction. The intended borrowing next month would accomplish that for the next 3 years.
In the past, we also funded our road maintenance out of those borrowings also, isn't that correct?
Yes, that's a
So
good point, in that in the past, the proceeds were used not only for reconstruction, but for maintenance issues as well. The city has since pivoted to self-funding about $350,000 per year for road maintenance out of the city's operating budget. So we're leveraging, with borrowed proceeds, to be using that for road reconstruction and parking lots.
Any questions for staff? Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Worth?
Aye.
Alderman Garrow?
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Durbin?
Aye.
Alderman Strelchek?
Aye.
That resolution passes. The next item is Resolution 3576, a resolution authorizing the payment of a claim by Mike and Joanne D. Robertus for tree damage on the property located at 3330 West Mequon Road in the amount of $10,000. What did the Public Works Committee?
If I may, the Public Works Committee discussed this at the meeting last month and ultimately recommended the adoption of the particular resolution. In a little bit of late breaking news, so to speak, a question was raised about insurance coverage on this matter, and we've been in discussions with the insurance company on it. The insurance company's response at this time is that they'd like some additional time to further vet the claim themselves to make a determination, and asked effectively that if the body would consider postponing action on it to allow them time to do that. So staff's recommendation at this time would be to table pending that insurance review.
A motion to table. Anybody?
Make a motion to table.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none? Well, that's tabled. Then Resolution 3580, a resolution awarding the 2019 construction inspection contracts to R.A. Smith, Rukert, Milky, and Kapoor and Associates. Public Works Committee, who's the chair of Public Works? Alderman Bushy?
Mr. Bushy.
Alderman Bushy, what was the recommendation on this item by Public Works? The construction inspection contracts.
It was passed 3-0.
Okay, so it's recommended to the council 3-0. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Worth?
Aye.
Alderman Garrow?
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Durbin?
Aye.
Alderman Strelchek?
Aye.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye. That item passes. There is nothing else on the agenda. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You're adjourned. Thank you.
Important.
These will suck, though. Yeah. Let's turn it off. Thank you.